Does European football affect your Premier League season? That is the discussion for this week's episode of The Narrative. I have three fans, one from Brighton, one from Aston Villa, one from Newcastle, and they all come from the JLA Discord server, which you should join. The reason you should join is because if you enjoy this channel and you want to be a part of the community, that is a place to be where you can have a voice, be it on the channel, as you're about to find out, but also just behind the scenes in terms of what we do here. Also, we have giveaways all the time. That was the whole point of this, the ability to give you stuff. And we have some great stuff to give you. Last week, it was Beer 52. This week, the giveaway are Drip Socks. I've got a pair. They're absolutely fantastic. If you play five-a-side, you need a pair. And it's a cracking Christmas present. Links in the description if you want to go and buy 60% off right now. Go click on that link. But if you click on the link beneath that, you will find the JLA Discord server where you can be a part of our decisions that we make, be a part of videos, of course, as well, and be in the chance of winning one of those 5 pairs of Drip Socks. Thank you to Drip Socks. Massive thank you. Massive thank you to you guys to being part of the JLA Discord server. We're growing something really exciting there. So don't be afraid. Go check it out and enjoy the video. Hello everybody, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel and The Narrative. This is turning into quite a nice part of the week for me because I get to sit back and have just a bit of a chin wag with good people. Now, we have ourselves a Discord server, and if you haven't joined it as of yet, now is the time. There's a link in the description. If you want to be a part of the channel, a part of the community, and have a voice, as shown by what's happening right this second, and last week we was talking about the relegation places, more importantly, the 3 teams that have been promoted and what it's actually like, not just the narrative, but the truth, then you want to be a part of the Discord server. There's a link in the description. Don't be afraid. There's about 6,000 of you lot in there now, and if you like this channel, you probably like the people that like this channel, so get in there and find some like-minded people, and we have a channel for every single Premier League team and loads more as well, so get involved. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about European football with 3 members of the JLA Discord server. So we have TJ, who is a Villa fan. We have Joe Sayers, who is a Brighton fan. And we also have, of course, Kieran, who is a Newcastle fan. And I'm really pleased that I put this jacket on up because me and Kieran pretty much got the same shirt on. So I should have kept that to myself. It's too late now. Anyway, what I want to talk about, guys, and the reason I wanted to get you guys together is you are all on a, European tour right now. And that's a great thing. But I have put forward certainly for Newcastle, and I'll come to you first, Kieran, this idea of the Champions League affecting the Premier League season. And so what I wanted to do is just have a chat with you guys and understand if you feel like it is, but both in terms of sort of short-term effects in the here and now, if you're starting to see anything that could lead to long-term effects for the season, and just what the differences are this year in terms of the experiences that you've had, the enjoyment that you've had, but, what you're seeing in terms of being able to kind of sustain your place at the European table. So thank you guys, firstly, for getting involved in this. So Kieran, let me come to you first. Let's talk about sort of the general short-term effects when it comes to Newcastle, because you step into the Champions League, and I think what's great here is we've got 3 different competitions with you 3 guys, and I think the competition does matter a little bit, as does the draw, and 2 of you have got pretty tricky draws in terms of Brighton and Newcastle. Kieran, how are you finding European football so far? Last result wasn't too bad, was it?
Bit magic since the last result, isn't it? Yeah, it's one of them. You're apprehensive going into it, aren't you? Especially after how long we've been out, and there's definitely effects that come of it. I think we're seeing it after the PSG game with West Ham. There was a lot of fatigue in the West Ham second half game. Concede later on, instead of 3 points, it's 1 point. So in terms of fatigue, there's a lot. But then, if you look at the weekend when we beat Palace 4-0, I know we're coming back off an international break, but Jacob Murphy gets his first start this season, and players that you wouldn't expect to be pushing for places are now pushing for places, being like, no, we've got Dortmund on Wednesday. I'm going to make a stake for the team. He gets a goal and 2 assists. So you have your positive and your negatives really on the back of it. But it's a good little ride.
Yeah, I mean, God, that's incredible so far. And obviously, very tough group to kind of go into. I had a quick look for all 3 of you because I think going into the season, let me come to you, Joe. Going into the season, what were your fears in terms of how European football could possibly affect you guys, with your, having that first jolly into that world?
Yeah. First of all, the fear of losing the players that have got you there, in Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo, two massive holes to fill, and two holes that we probably haven't filled, to be honest. And that's the initial fear, that you go into a season where there's going to be an extra competition with less players. And we've added in certain other areas. We've added in experience, but I'm not 100% sure of the same quality is there, the same fluidity. You're taking the engine out of a team that worked so well last season, and it's something Roberto De Zerbi has referenced a lot since obviously getting into Europe, and obviously the run of games that we've had, and there's been so much rotation, and I'm yet to see the players that can really step up and fill those gaping holes that Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister left. And I think there wasn't an expectation that the club would be able to get like for like, because I think Moises Caicedo, one of the best young defensive midfielders in the world, and Alexis McAllister, a World Cup winner. It's incredibly difficult for the club to react to those losses. And it's just been a real transition period where I think the fans have been struggling to deal with the expectation of coming off the back of a really fantastic season last season. And there's a lot of media hype around Brighton. And it's whether can we live up to those expectations. I don't think we have done so far, but I think we're doing okay.
TJ, have you felt that hype? Because I think, imagine with the Conference League, there's a feeling that almost even in this conversation, you should be fine because it's the Conference League and it's not, you're not got the same caliber of teams that you're up against. But at the same time, you are, playing 2 games a week, every single week, and that can affect you at some point. But then the overall discussion around Aston Villa as a team, up until this point, would you suggest that, and actually on the channel, guys, if you're not aware, we've just put out a video on Kieran Trippier that's out right now about how bloody brilliant he is. We've also done one on Aston Villa. And when I was talking about Aston Villa and how they have a chance of going again and maybe getting the Champions League, we were talking about this idea that the ability for Aston Villa to kind of slightly go under the radar because of that first game against Newcastle and that game against Liverpool. Have you felt the same kind of hype and heat around Aston Villa, or have you gone under the radar because of that disappointing first result?
I think at the moment we're in a bit of a weird position because we lost to Newcastle in the first day of the season, and I think all the kind of big 6 fans were like, oh, okay, Aston Villa mid-table club, let's not worry about them. And I think it was really the result against Brighton when everyone started to go, oh, okay, we might have something here.
Yeah.
And as Villa fans, we've always kind of had this little bit of a chip on our shoulder because we're like, we're one of the biggest clubs in the country. Why does no one give us kind of, the credit that we deserve? And I think now it's starting to kind of buy into our favour because we do go under the radar. We don't really have many games on live television a lot of the time. And when you kind of look at like the big sports pages across social media, even on Sky Sports, they never really tend to talk about us a lot. And it does allow us to kind of have this, this kind of, this low-key ism about us, if you know what I mean. And we do really well. We play really, really good games. And then you kind of hear the commentary and no one really talks about us. And, if we're the first game on a Sunday, they'll kind of talk about us for 3-4 minutes and then move on. So I think at the moment we're kind of buying into it and we like having this kind of, we've got players like Douglas Luiz, like Boubacar Kamara, who I think have gone really under the radar over the past year and a half. And a lot of Villa fans are like, they should be getting the credit they deserve. But a lot of us are like, when they do start getting the credit they deserve, we might have another Jack Grealish situation where club, they start looking at our players. And obviously I look at teams like Brighton, where you guys have, as you said, your core has been kind of removed from last season. And the exact same could have happened to us this season. We could have lost Kamara. We could have lost Douglas Luiz, but we haven't. And it's probably because we didn't really have all eyes on us last season. But I think now, as the games progress, I think we're going to start getting a bit more kind of clout, if you will.
Yes. I think that's fascinating because, looking at the goals here, all 3 of you guys have been scoring a lot of goals. Newcastle, 24, but there's an 8 in there, which I'm not trying to discount, but it is a bit of a freak result. Brighton scored 22, conceded 18, which is clearly the problem for Brighton this year. And Aston Villa, as you say, have scored 23 goals and only conceded 13. And again, Newcastle's defence is as superb as ever. It's interesting that you've all said this, because I had a little dig into maybe a couple of case studies that would have a look at, how a team that gets into Europe for the first time, how they get on, and if European football affects a team. Now, there's a few different studies, and I saw one from 2016, which kind of said the same kind of things as this one that I'm kind of about to read out. And first of all, in terms of not being a Big Six team. Now, I understand context changes these things a little bit, and Newcastle maybe, slightly different to that. Aston Villa, of course, spent a lot of money as well. In terms of teams outside the Big Six, since 2010-11, this was up till 2022, I think, only 13 have qualified for European football, and only 3 have replicated the success the following season to get consecutive years of European football, which shows how hard it is. And then they were looking at the reasons why this might be. And the data showed that if a club can maintain European football after its first season, then it will likely stay competing in Europe for many seasons afterwards. On the other hand, if a team is not able to maintain the quality of players or strengthen their squad, they are likely to suffer harshly. And the big reason why teams did struggle once they got into European football was exactly what you two have just said, which is losing your best players. So I want to get to you first, Kieran, because I think that's not a problem for you, is it, right now? So coming towards the strategy, because I think when you lose players, or you have a fear of losing players for TJ right now, which of course hasn't happened as of yet, then maybe you have to kind of keep that in your thinking. In terms of the strategy for Newcastle this year, like you've just spoken about, Murphy just pops on the pitch and, getting his assists and getting his goals and looking outrageously good, which just, that highlights just how fantastic Eddie Howe has been able to kind of create a competitive squad. But have you seen a difference in strategy this year in terms of, especially with the idea that there's such a high volume of games this year?
Yeah, rotation's been key. I think last year you've seen a lot of Joelinton, Bruno, Willock, solid midfield three. Longstaff was obviously in the second half of the season, did his bit. But we're really rotating players a lot more now. Eddie Howe mentioned it at the weekend. 60 minutes, I think we went 4-0 up. And that was his type of go, right, half an hour, let's get the boys on that needs minutes in the legs. Anderson's dropping it in the middle three. He's normally really left wing. He was on loan at Bristol Rovers, playing down, as a centre forward. And it's not really like us having a fear of losing players as such. I think what we've lost players through is injury. We've done half of what we've done so far. The past 4 games without Sven Botman. Joe Willock hasn't been fit all season. Yeah. Joelinton's missed the past 3 games. I think it's just finding that right balance of when you're rotating players, getting the balance in that's going to get you a result more than anything else.
Are you surprised by the ability of, and I loathe to say it, because of the names that we're expecting to stop running hot, continuing to run so hot? Because at some point, I guess it's like it's not running hot anymore. They're just really good players or being very well managed. What's the truth with that squad? Do you think it's time for, like to myself, to see Almiron and see Joelinton and see Longstaff as like high level Champions League players now?
It's certainly getting to that point. I mean, I think Newcastle fans are the worst for it when they call out a player. If someone has a bad game, they know they've had a bad game. But when you see the lineup before PSG and you've got Jamal Lascelles at centre half going up against Koulibaly, Mbappe, Dembele, honestly, you just don't think you've got a hope in hell. But then he's, the past 4 games, been amazing. He's quoted today in an interview saying he's not been in a situation where he's played in such a high quality team. And I think that's just down to the manager, the standard he's set and what everyone expects of one another now. It's mental. But you're right about thinking, did he start getting the credit they deserve? Because I think Joelinton, box to box, is one of the best in the Premier League in the midfield at what he does. And it's silly because it's getting to that stage now where it's like, is Longstaff now coming into that bracket? Is Trippier the best right back in the league?
Yeah, I did a England squad video the other day, and we were talking about the sort of midfield, and Calvin Phillips has kind of got that spot at the moment, and it's kind of because there's not a huge amount of options for what Southgate wants, which is a kind of hard-working midfielder alongside Declan Rice. And someone said Longstaff, who hadn't really thought about enough, and I was thinking about it, I was like, there's a lot of Newcastle players that are starting to crystallise in my mind. Anthony Gordon, I think, being one in particular, where I was like, is he good? And actually, well, hang on a minute. At some point, you've got to kind of accept that he's good. I guess this is a weird question, but like percentage-wise, what percentage quality add-on does Eddie Howe add, do you think, to those players that we're kind of talking about? If Eddie Howe moves on and you bring in a new manager, do you see a heavy drop-off from those players?
100%.
Really?
Definitely. If you look at, I mean, Joe Linton's obviously going to be used as that example for, the dramatic turn in his career. But if you look at what he was before Eddie Howe came in, he was lost. And we were all talking about, there's a time to get rid, cut the losses, because we paid 40 million for him. And then he comes in and he turns into what he is now. But it's like you said, you're seeing that with a lot of players. Dan Burn playing left back in week in, week out. Everyone was questioning, is he going to have the pace to do it in the Champions League and the Premier League? He is. If Eddie was to leave, I don't think there would be a big level of drop-off, definitely. I don't think you'd see the same consistency from everyone, week in, week out.
And thinking of all three of you guys and your managers, like, that's an incredible three managers right now who are absolutely, killing it. Coming back to that idea of losing your players and that then leads to a sort of drop off in your league position. Joe, how do you feel about that? Because I think the rotation thing is an interesting one. It's something that's understandable. I had a quick look to see how many players you guys have used in terms of starting a game in the Premier League. Do you want to have a little guess, actually? Kieran, how many players do you think you've started in the Premier League so far?
Newcastle. I'm going to go with 19.
19 is 18. TJ, Villa, what do you think? Started
16.
17. And then Joe, how many do you think Brighton?
I think it's something ridiculous like 21.
It's 24.
Yeah.
So I think everything gets defined as a success or a failure depending on the results. And obviously the results right now for Brighton are, a little bit disappointing. Obviously some difficult teams played amongst that in a difficult group. How do you feel about the strategy with De Zerbi? Because when we talk about, percentage quality add-on, which is a new phrase that I seem to have created today, that Brighton is certainly, one of the sort of gatekeepers of just being able to pluck a name that's not crystallised in our minds, and it turns out they're like wonderful footballers. But with the amount of rotation, has that affected the team this season? And is that a strategy that you think he should continue to employ?
The thing that's affected the team the most, and you mentioned it earlier about how many goals we've shipped in the Premier League this season, I think it comes down to the rotation of goalkeepers. I think it's a really important thing in the way we play football to install a level of trust amongst a centre-back pairing and a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of mistakes have come from pressure that teams are applying because they know how we want to play out from the back. And especially the capitulation against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. 2 very quick goals leading into half-time, and then it changes the game on its head. And I think we were pretty comfortable up until that moment. And it's not a worry for me in terms of our attacking sense and in midfield. I think we're okay there, even given the fact that we've lost Moises Caicedo. Baliba's come in and done well and shown his quality. There's still a lot for him to learn, absolutely. 19 years old coming into a league that he doesn't know, and he's learning the hard way. You saw against Man City his mistake that led to Haaland's goal. So I think it's just a wait and see for us at the moment for these new players to learn De Zerbi's system. But can they learn his system whilst they're being rotated so much? I'm not sure. And we've had a lot of injuries to deal with as well, especially to our fullbacks.
It feels a bit like, so with Newcastle, there's a kind of, it's sort of, there's a stability there with a lot of players, even the players that aren't your, go-to guys that we're talking about, they've at least been at the club a long time. And so they're both excited, but they also kind of know their place. And so they're absolutely loving that. And I think that leads to an element of cohesion and hard work rate, and the adrenaline's obviously pumping there. For Brighton, I think when you lose 1 or 2 players, there's always going to be this, it's sort of like a moment of time where you need to kind of readdress the chemistry, and you're going to have players who aren't as good as the guy that you've just had, because it takes him 3, 4, 5 months, even longer, to kind of get to that level. And that's always the thing that you're going to be battling with at Brighton, because until you get to a point where you decide you're not going to sell anymore, you're always going to be that selling club. And an understanding of who you are is probably what's made you as successful as you've been. TJ, with Aston Villa, I think you're kind of somewhere in between here, where you've got, I think, like name for name, you've got one hell of a squad there that's actually quite expensively assembled. And actually, when it comes to the stress of the European fixtures, it doesn't feel as intense as it has been for Brighton or for Newcastle. Are you feeling any sort of short-term or long-term effects? And are you seeing a strategy from Unai Emery when it comes to dealing with European football and the league? Because, out of the three of you used the least amount of players. And again, there's an overall feeling that I'm kind of throwing out here that the Conference League is a pretty comfortable thing to deal with. So are you seeing any difference?
Yeah, it's really strange because we don't actually have like a big kind of team. I feel like with Newcastle and Brighton, you can replace players here and there because the drop off of quality and kind of game readiness is pretty much at the same level. With Aston Villa, we've got players on the bench, and we've definitely improved our bench over summer. We've got Zaniolo, Tillemans, we've got Durant that's coming through, but I think the main issue that we're finding at the moment is we're playing too much towards our opponent in the Conference League. We know that, we've just gone and beat West Ham 4-1. We beat Brighton pretty badly as well. But then we've gone to Legia Warsaw and we've lost 3-2. And they've literally just scored 3 goals where it's just like, I remember watching it with my girlfriend and she was like, oh, well, they're not going to score another one. Where I was like, they know how to score now.
Stop talking, love.
We're not stopping. Yeah, please, you're killing me. They know how to score now. And all it takes is one chance, and then I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Christa, that team, the second team that we played, again, it was a 95th minute winner. And with Aston Villa, one thing I love watching about Brighton is that you guys are like, really forward thinking, 1, 2, 3, 4 passes, and you're in the end. Near the box. And then same with Newcastle, it's just 100 miles per hour. With our manager, we've got this really kind of slow Spanish style of playing where we like to build it up, we like to play this box midfield, and we like to kind of connect around there, use the fullbacks. So when we're not playing well, we're not just playing not well, we're playing really slow as well, and teams can kind of relax. And that's what we saw against in our first game, where they score first and it's kind of like, right, are we going to keep playing slowly, or are we going to try and find a goal? And sometimes when you've got players coming in like Callum Chambers, Tillemans, who on paper is a really good player, but we haven't quite seen it yet, and then John Duran, who still is, just really raw, there can kind of be this, this need for experience and this need for kind of tactics and game plan, because you look at Callum Chambers and he's like, well, I don't know whether to play fast or slowly because I haven't got that much game time. You look at Tillemans, who just looks completely lost in that first game because he's just like, right, I don't know, what passages of play we're going to use now.
TJ, do you think that West Ham winning it last year has made the expectations go up for you and made it a less enjoyable initial start to this European competition?
I loved it when West Ham won last season because I was like, I want British teams to have as much European pedigree as possible. And the final whistle went, and I went,
we better win it then.
Right? That's the standard.
Yeah,
that's the standard. And,
that's interesting.
We're playing Alkmaar on Thursday, and I'm petrified. With how we've played in the Conference League, I am petrified. That could easily be 3-0 to Alkmaar, just the way that we've been playing in Europe. But then on the other side, we can go to Alkmaar and we can win 3-0. They have one shot on target. And West Ham beat Alkmaar last season, so now a lot of West Ham fans who are probably a bit salty over the weekend are going to be thinking, right, if they don't win against Alkmaar, then we're the true Claret and Blue club.
Burnley fans fuming right now. That's God, that's fascinating. So in terms of your feeling around, this European competition that you're in, or whatever one you're in, right? It feels like, so Newcastle, again, you all have 3 different layers of like, be it rotation or squad or cohesion right now, it feels like right now. And so I didn't realize I would find this, but for Aston Villa, for Aston Villa fans, the truth is deep down is we better get to the latter stages. Whereas for Kieran and for Joe, are you still in a state of, I can't believe you're enjoying it whilst you've got it? Is that right, Kieran?
100%. I mean, especially after our first two results, it's like, right, okay, we'll move on to Dortmund quietly, no expectation again, at home. How far can we go? It's interesting, really interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how people are like looking at it right now. And me and Joe were chatting before we started recording here. We kind of like, you can't win. You know, the expectation, you sort of want to be over there, and then you go over there and go, oh no, we're here. We better stay here. Like, it's quite a difficult thing to kind of deal with. And so, final question from me. I just wanted to know how do you think it will play out this season for your respective clubs, both in the tournament itself that you're in the Premier League, of course, as well. And do you overall believe that European football will have a positive or a negative effect on your Premier League season? Joe, I'll come to you first.
I think ours all pegs down to this next game against Ajax. I think second home game. We haven't won in Europe yet. Granted, it's only been 2 games, and one of them a really tough away game to Marseille, who just got a new manager in as well. And I think we just need to get our feet off the ground, get a win under our belts, and then the fans will believe, and the players will really believe that they're capable of competing on this level. I think our players have been overawed by the occasion on both senses. Athens were unbelievably physical with us, and Marseille, blew us away in the first half with 2 very quick goals. So I think we need to get our feet off the ground, as I say. I do think our Premier League form will suffer the longer that we're in Europe. And for me, it's just a case of just enjoying it as a fan and just living the moment, because I don't know if anyone's familiar with the history of our football club, but 26 odd years ago, we were getting sold into the ground by an owner. We didn't have a home. We were 1 point and 1 goal away from going out of the league completely and not existing as a club anymore. So to us finding ourselves in European football 26 years later, that moment for me will live with me forever as a fan. And whether we succeed or whether we go out of the group stage, it will be an unbelievable experience either way.
Absolutely, that's a good attitude. TJ, yeah, how do you think Europe will affect your Premier League season, or will it?
I don't know at this point, to be honest. I really don't know. I think, given the evidence, European football isn't affecting us at the moment, but it's only because it feels like the squad are saving their good performances for the league. We've been knocked out of the cup as well, Carabao Cup. So from a fan's perspective, it does feel like Unai really is kind of prioritising the league, and then, saying to himself, well, I've been there before. I know what to do in the European competitions, so I can use a different type of system, and we'll get through the group, but we won't, assert too much effort into it. But I think if we do get out of the group, because we are still bottom of our Conference League table, so we still need to get out of the group. I think if we get out of the group, that's when we'll start to see it having an effect on our kind of Premier League form. We've never really been a club that has been able to play in 2 competitions at the same time. And also, in our recent history, because, I'm only a young Villa fan, I know Aston Villa as a championship team, or as a team that's almost getting relegated. So, as the same with Brighton, I am really happy to be there, even though it's a Conference League, and I am savouring it. But at the same time, I don't want it to affect the Premier League too much, because, as you said at the start, getting to a European competition 2 years in a row is a pretty big feat, and it kind of, it attracts players, it attracts further investment, better sponsors, all that type of thing. So I really just want to get to a European competition next season. Whether that's winning the Conference League, fine. Whether that's finishing 6th or 7th in the Premier League, fine. But Unai, just one of them.
This is a difficult question. Very quick answer for me, if you can. Winning the Conference League or finishing 4th?
Oh, finishing 4th.
Really?
Yeah, finishing 4th. 4th in the Premier League.
Trophy, though, isn't it? It's a trophy. Don't fancy a trophy.
A lot of Villa fans are going to disagree with me, but
that is a good question. I'm intrigued. Comments. Don't go after TJ. I think that's a sensible decision. I'm probably not the one I would have taken, but I totally get why you would go down that route. Kieran, final thing actually, and from this article, which I thought was really interesting, was that in terms of points per game after a European game, there's not actually that much difference between being in Europe and not being in Europe, which I thought was always a thing. But, from that data, it suggests that it isn't. And Newcastle obviously are doing brilliantly in the Premier League despite the Champions League, which I thought would hurt them. But again, this article suggests that it's actually sort of down the road, the overall points, depending on the amount of games that you play in the Champions League. That's where you lose about half a point per game of difference compared to the season before. So for Newcastle, again, same question really. Do you think, obviously up to now it's been great, but do you think that European football will take a toll on you guys in time, or do you think you'll be able to ride it out?
It's intriguing because we didn't know how we were going to attack this season in terms of all the competitions, Premier League, Champions League, the Cups. And if you look before our last Champions League game, we beat Man City in the Carabao Cup. So quite clearly, Eddie Howe's got the attitude that he wants to attack every competition. So it is intriguing. Is it going to catch up with her? At some point, probably. But in hindsight, we've obviously got players coming back. We're starting to get that balance of players being drip feed into the team. If we can keep that balance going, then I think the players are going to be used to a certain style of playing and who's going to be in when, who's going to be important in what game. And then you've got January as well. And I don't want to talk about the transfer window, but we didn't spend loads in the summer. So obviously we've kept money aside for January. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say we're going to get out the group. But if we beat Dortmund on Wednesday, then we're on 7 points and you're nearly there. It's mad.
I feel harsh on TJ, so I'm going to put both of you in the same spot. So, Joe, quickly. Brighton finishing the Champions League or winning the Europa League?
Win the Europa League.
He's taken the Europa League. Okay, same question to you, Kieran. So you don't make it out of the group. You finish third. Europa League, win, or getting back in the Champions League?
You win Europa League.
Yeah,
it's been too long for Newcastle without a trophy.
Yeah, fair enough. I tried to save you. Guys, amazing. Really, really enjoyed it. So easy to chat to you guys. And I'm loving what the narrative is becoming. It's nice to have a bit of a longer conversation with you all. Joe, tell people about your podcast so they can go and subscribe to it.
Yeah, so as you can see behind me, Albion Obsessed podcast. We do post-match reaction, and a great time to announce it probably to you guys that we've got a little documentary coming out soon as well. So go ahead and subscribe to the Albion Obsessed podcast and follow us on X or whatever it's called now, at Albion Obsessed. Okay. So yeah, thanks for having me on, James.
Mate, I appreciate you taking the time. TJ, I'm demanding a YouTube channel from you. Apparently it's currently on private, but it's on its way soon. But if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Instagram mainly, le.tj, LaTJ. I do other stuff in the world, so yeah, go have a look. Some Aston Villa stuff over there, but some other cool stuff that I think people might be intrigued by. And again, yeah, thank you for having me on, James.
All good, man.
Yeah,
good
pleasure.
Stuff. Cheers, mate. And Kieran, where can people find you?
Kieran Bow on all socials. I'm down as a musician, so if you're on Spotify, anything like that, you can go listen to me songs on there. But this has been amazing because the first time I've actually got to talk about football and not music, because that's one of my number one passions. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll have to get you to do a song next time. I can see the guitar in the background. Right, guys, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Talk to me, people. What do you think about European football and the effect on a team's Premier League season? Should we even be bothered about that? Who cares? It's all about getting there and then enjoying yourself, I'd imagine. And the guys are enjoying their European tours individually. Make sure you subscribe to them. Check them out. Subscribe to this channel as well. Hit the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.